Your Excellencies, beloved brothers in the priesthood, I was barely 5 years old when I had my first experience of death in the death of my grandmother. I was stunned. I could not say anything. I did not know what death was. Now in my senior years, I have seen too many deaths, much too many. They hurt and cause me grief and sadness. Each death causes grief and we never really get over. Grief accumulates one on top of the other, patong-patong. I have stood by too many friends at the point of death who did not survive. I have seen a handful of friends and brethren who wrestled with death and lived, but have never been the same again, handicapped or bedridden, needing assistance in order to live. When a priest dies, something in me as bishop dies too. I never recover from the death of priest friends and bishop friends. Recently, Monsignor Oliver, and even more recently, Bishop Ocampo. I just pretend that all is well, but the vacuum really remains and truly stays. Death and dying, mysteries too deep and too wide to embrace, and difficult to befriend. Death is the most certain to happen to all of us, and yet it is also the most uncertain and most feared. We can get exemption from taxes, but there is no exemption from death. Students can get exemption from final exams, but there is no exemption from the last final breath. We can fall into morbidity and depression, thinking too often about our death and deaths of brother priests. To think about death too often can be a symptom of some mental illness or even depression. In fact, to resist death is sometimes advised upon those in critical condition in the ICUs of our hospitals. Fight, labanan mo. Pushing away the thought of death is sometimes considered healthy. A stream of thoughts on death can be morbid and generate an undercurrent of anxiety or guilt. But the same stream of thoughts on death coming from prayer can be also uplifting and consoling, inspiring and life-generating. Brother bishops and priests, brother deacons, we priests must be experts in death and dying. To die is why we were called to follow the Lord. We were called, "Come follow me, come die with me." Today, when we gather with our parishioners to thank the Lord for the gift of holy priesthood, we remember the power to do what the Lord did. We are eternally grateful. At every Mass and in every altar, through the words of the Lord, repeated by our unworthy lips, we say, "Before he was given up to death, a death he freely accepted." There is no Eucharist without dying and death. Dying, Christ destroyed death. Rising, Christ restored our life. The priest of God cannot be detached from this death. We were called to be priests who die every day, united in the daily dying of the Lord on the altar of the Eucharist. Embalmers and pathologists have seen dead bodies, study them, and make cadavers defy the ugly face of death. We do not embalm or autopsy, but we face death daily also. We priests see death every day at every Mass, and we are not cowed. We know that death always leads to new life. We died and rose when we were ordained. We make the Lord die and rise at every Mass by the power of our words. We have the power over death. That power is not about us. That power is God at work in us, at work through our words, at work in our lives, through Him, with Him, in Him. But how did death become so ugly? How did thinking about death become a sign of mental sickness? We need priests who know how to die, who die lovingly, cheerfully every day, rise with the Lord every day, who can teach people how to die with joy. When the priests refuse to die, they die even before they die. They stink before they decay. They slip into a life of sorrow and grief even before their burial. The first enemy is monotony and routine. Having repeated the words about the death of the Lord 1,000 times, we can get desensitized, unaffected, cynical, weary, rushed. Eucharistic prayer too is the favorite choice for its shortness. But despite its shortness, we still rush it. The prayers at Mass, supposed to be said in private silence, are bypassed. The Mass becomes boring and tasteless, so different from the time we first celebrated. When boredom at the liturgy sets in, the dying is forgotten, the stipend becomes more important, the homily becomes bland and long and senseless. The fire becomes only a flickering flame, the liturgy becomes sloppy, life is only for enjoyment. We remove the clerical collar for the sports shirt. The misplaced respect and support for priests in our Filipino Catholic culture can yield to clericalism and a priestly lifestyle of immunity from difficulty and exemption from rules. Moral theology does not exempt priests from the 10 Commandments. The corruption of the best is the worst. Priestly vanity is cancer. Priestly entitlement is an infection that eats the soul of our ordination. Too many privileges given to us by our well-meaning parishioners can deafen our ears to the voice, "Carry your cross and follow me." We were not called for pleasure, but for greatness. Pleasure and comfort are very bad teachers. There are lessons in life that only the cross can teach. Priestly fire dies out when we lock ourselves in the comfort of our rectories. The last enemy of our priestly life is schizophrenia. If that is too difficult to spell and pronounce, I just say, living a double life. It is living a secret life of infidelity in darkness as we hold in our hands the divine mysteries in the daylight. Hypocrisy leads to priestly emptiness that no successful fundraising or academic degrees can cover up. When pastoral charity bows out to ecclesiastical bureaucracy, religion becomes burdensome to God's people. Pastors have become temple businessmen. The face of the person must be more important than the face of the wristwatch. Such priests die before they die. They stink, but they cannot smell themselves. Today with you, my dear brother priests, let us commit to be priests who are friends with death. Let us resist the trap of monotony and boredom that robs the Mass of its beauty and power, reducing it to a ritual. Say no to vanity, and learn to courageously decline the privileges that ordination has accorded us. Fix your eyes on the gold of the Lord, even if it means mining it from the mud of the human soul. You have only one priestly body to live, only one priestly life to offer, for the one church under one God. Resist schizophrenia of clerical hypocrisy. Hypocrisy stinks, although the last one to sniff it is us. Choose the path of death and dying, because it is the only path to life. Do not be afraid to die. That is why we were called. To die 1,000 times for the Lord is the soul of our priestly calling.